How We Should Reorganize the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection by Vladimir Lenin. First published the 25th of January 1923. It is beyond question that the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection is an enormous difficulty for us, and that so far this difficulty has not been overcome. I think that the comrades who try to overcome the difficulty by denying that the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection is useful and necessary are wrong. But I do not deny that the problem presented by our state apparatus and the task of improving it is very difficult, that it is far from being solved, and is an extremely urgent one. With the exception of the People's Commissariat of Foreign Affairs, our state apparatus is to a considerable extent a survival of the past and has undergone hardly any serious change. It has only been slightly touched up on the surface, but in all other respects it is a most typical relic of our old state machine. And so, to find a method of really renovating it, I think we ought to turn for experience to our Civil War. How did we act in the more critical moment of the Civil War? We concentrated our best party forces in the Red Army, we mobilized the best of our workers, we looked for new forces at the deepest roots of our dictatorship. I am convinced that we must go to the same source to find the means of reorganizing the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection. I recommend that our 12th Party Congress adopt the following plan of reorganization, based on some enlargement of our Central Control Commission. The plenary meetings of the Central Committee of our party are already revealing a tendency to develop into a kind of Supreme Party Conference. They take place, on the average, not more than once in 2 months, while the routine work is conducted, as we know, on behalf of the Central Committee by our Political Bureau, our Organizing Bureau, our Secretariat, and so forth. I think we ought to follow the road we have thus taken to the end and definitely transform the plenary meetings of the Central Committee into Supreme Party conferences convened once in 2 months jointly with the Central Control Commission. The Central Control Commission should be combined with the main body of the reorganized Workers' and Peasants' Inspection along the following lines. I propose that the Congress should elect 75 to 100 new members to the Central Control Commission. They should be workers and peasants, and should go through the same party screening as ordinary members of the Central Committee, because they are to enjoy the same rights as the members of the Central Committee. On the other hand, the staff of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection should be reduced to 300 or 400 persons, specially screened for conscientiousness and knowledge of our state apparatus. They must also undergo a special test as regards their knowledge of the principles of scientific organization of labor in general, and of administrative work, office work, and so forth, in particular. In my opinion, such a union of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection with the Central Control Commission will be beneficial to both these institutions. On the one hand, the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection will thus obtain such high authority that it will certainly not be inferior to the People's Commissariat of Foreign Affairs. On the other hand, our Central Committee, together with the Central Control Commission, will definitely take the road of becoming a Supreme Party Conference, which in fact it has already taken, and along which it should proceed to the end so as to be able to fulfill its functions properly in 2 respects, in respect to its own methodical, expedient and systematic organization of work, and in respect to maintaining contacts with the broad masses through the medium of the best of our workers and peasants. I foresee an objection that, directly or indirectly, may come from those spheres which make our state apparatus antiquated, that is, from those who urge that its present, utterly impossible, indecently pre-revolutionary form be preserved. Incidentally, we now have an opportunity which rarely occurs in history of ascertaining the period necessary for bringing about radical social changes. We now see clearly what can be done in 5 years, and what requires much more time. The objection I foresee is that the change I propose will lead to nothing but chaos. The members of the Central Control Commission will wander around all the institutions, not knowing where, why or to whom to apply, causing disorganization everywhere and distracting employees from their routine work, etc., etc. I think that the malicious source of this objection is so obvious that it does not warrant a reply. It goes without saying that the Presidium of the Central Control Commission, the People's Commissar of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection and his Collegium, and also, in the proper cases, the Secretariat of our Central Committee, will have to put in years of persistent effort to get the Commissariat properly organized, and to get it to function smoothly in conjunction with the Central Control Commission. In my opinion, the People's Commissar of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection, as well as the whole Collegium, can, and should, remain and guide the work of the entire Workers' and Peasants' Inspection, including the work of all the members of the Central Control Commission who will be placed under his command. The 300 or 400 employees of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection that are to remain, according to my plan, should, on the one hand, perform purely secretarial functions for the other members of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection and for the supplementary members of the Central Control Commission, and, on the other hand, they should be highly skilled, specially screened, particularly reliable, and highly paid, so that they may be relieved of their present truly unhappy, to say the least, position of Workers' and Peasants' Inspection officials. I am sure that the reduction of the staff to the number I have indicated will greatly enhance the efficiency of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection personnel and the quality of all its work, enabling the People's Commissaire and the members of the Collegium to concentrate their efforts entirely on organizing work and on systematically and steadily improving its efficiency, which is so absolutely essential for our Workers' and Peasants' government, and for our Soviet system. On the other hand, I also think that the People's Commissaire of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection should work partly combining and partly coordinating those higher institutions for the organization of labor, the Central Institute of Labor, etc., of which there are now no fewer than 12 in our republic. Excessive uniformity and a consequent desire to unity will be harmful. On the contrary, what is needed here is a reasonable and expedient mean between combining all these institutions and properly delimiting them, allowing for a certain independence in each of them. Our own Central Committee will undoubtedly gain no less from this reorganization than the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection. It will gain because its contacts with the masses will be greater and because the regularity and effectiveness of its work will improve. It will then be possible, and necessary, to institute a stricter and more responsible procedure of preparing for the meetings of the Political Bureau, which should be attended by a definite number of members of the Central Control Commission determined either from a definite period or by some organization plan. In distributing work to the members of the Central Control Commission, the People's Commissaire of the Workers' and Peasants' Inspection, in conjunction with the Presidium of the Central Control Commission, should impose on them the duty either of attending the meetings of the Political Bureau for the purpose of examining all the documents pertaining to matters that come before it in one way or another, or of devoting their working time to theoretical study, to the study of scientific methods of organizing labor, or of taking a practical part in the work of supervising and improving our machinery of state, from the higher state institutions to the lower local bodies, etc. I also think that in addition to the political advantages occurring from the fact that the members of the Central Committee and the Central Control Commission will, as a consequence of this reform, be much better informed and better prepared for the meetings of the Political Bureau, all the documents relevant to the business to be discussed at these meetings should be sent to all the members of the Central Committee and the Central Control Commission not later than the day before the meeting of the Political Bureau, except in absolutely urgent cases, for which special methods of informing the members of the Central Committee and the Central Control Commission and of settling these matters must be devised. There will also be the advantage that the influence of purely personal and incidental factors in our Central Committee will diminish, and this will reduce the danger of a split. Our Central Committee has grown into a strictly centralized and highly authoritative group, but the conditions under which this group is working are not concurrent with its authority. The reform I recommend should help to remove this defect, and the members of the Central Control Commission, whose duty it will be to attend all meetings of the Political Bureau in a definite number, will have to form a compact group which should not allow anybody's authority without exception, neither that of the General Secretary, Stalin, nor of any other member of the Central Committee, to prevent them from putting questions, verifying documents, and, in general, from keeping themselves fully informed of all things and from exercising the strictest control over the proper conduct of affairs. Of course, in our Soviet Republic, the social order is based on the collaboration of two classes, the workers and peasants, in which the netmen, that is, the bourgeoisie, are now permitted to participate on certain terms. If serious class disagreements arise between these classes, a split will be inevitable. But the grounds for such a split are not inevitable in our social system, and it is the principal tasks of our Central Committee and Central Control Commission, as well as of our party as a whole, to watch very closely over such circumstances as may cause a split, and to forestall them, for in the final analysis the fate of our republic will depend on whether the peasant masses will stand by the working class, loyal to their alliance, or whether they will permit the netmen, That is, the new bourgeoisie, to drive a wedge between them and the working class, to split them off from the working class. The more clearly we see this alternative, the more clearly all our workers and peasants understand it, the greater are the chances that we shall avoid a split which would be fatal for the Soviet Republic.